Welcome to the Chaos and Light podcast. I am your host, Angela Levesque, and this show is all about spirituality, consciousness, and integrated health. And on today's episode, we have world-renowned spiritual teacher, Udo Erasmus, and we are going to be talking about the thirst of the heart. But before we get there, if you haven't checked out chaosandlight.com for a while, I suggest you do. We've got all sorts of cool sacred geometry meditations happening there, got some new chanting, all sorts of cool things, article on synchronicity and diving deep into consciousness, all sorts of cool things. So if you haven't been there for a while, please check out chaosandlight.com. Are you enjoying this podcast and want to help this lady out? Well, share it with friends, or even better, leave a review on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the show. Well, I'm here today with Udo Erasmus. He is a pioneer of the health and wellness industry, having created FLAX OIL and the healthy fats movement. He is also the co-founder of UDO'S CHOICE supplement brand, an accomplished author, including Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, that has sold over 250,000 copies worldwide. Udo has extensive education in biochemistry and biology, a master's degree in counseling psychology, and has impacted over 5 million plus lives by passionately conducting 5,000 live presentations, 3,000 plus media interviews, 15,000 staff trainings, and has traveled to over 40 countries with his message on how to achieve perfect health. Well, with that, I welcome Udo to the Chaos and Life podcast. Hello.
Hey, glad to be on.
I'm glad to have you on. Wow, that is, you've got quite the bio there. Tell us how long
took me 79 years to get that bio.
79 years, 79 short years. That's fantastic. There's, like I said, in our little talk at the beginning here, there's so many things in the nutritional world that I would love to talk about. But what I really want to dive into here today is you talk about something called the thirst of the heart. So let's start there. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so thirst of the heart is a name for an ache or a pain or an uneasiness or a discomfort that we feel in our chest that is not based on cardiovascular or lung disease. And we feel it whenever we get disappointed, whenever something we counted on ends, whenever something we hold dear ends. So whether it's grandma dies or the dog runs away, or you have somebody made a promise and they broke the promise, or you're in a relationship and the other person decided to move on and you felt dumped, right? Then we call it blue, right? But it's the same feeling. It's remarkable how many different things trigger that same feeling of something's missing, of something has been lost in our chest. That's what I call thirst of the heart. That's just one name. I have actually got 10 pages of different names for that same feeling. And it depends on what triggers it, which name we use for it. So when we're lonely, something's missing, we feel it here. When we have a fight with our loved one and we didn't expect it and didn't see it coming, we feel it here. When we get dumped, we feel it here. Then it's called blues, right? When sometimes we call it longing or yearning or striving or driven or separated, isolated, grief, loss, feeling restricted so we can't breathe, unsettled, restless, empty. You get the picture. This is like, yes. There's a lot of words. And what's funny about them, if you pay attention to when you feel them, they're always the same feeling in the same place in your body. And what is that is the question. And we don't know because nobody told us, but I'm going to tell you.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear.
So what that is your life or your heart calling your awareness to come back home to where your wholeness lives, where your wholeness has always lived. It's right behind that ache. And that ache gets you out of your head, and it makes you simple, and it grounds you. And you're already in feeling. And less than a hair's breadth behind that feeling is your wholeness, is your fullness, is your joy, is your contentment, is your peace, is your ecstasy, is your magnificence, is your awesomeness, is your beauty. That far behind it, less than the hair's breadth. And so the thirst of the heart is actually, even though we don't like it and we distract ourselves from it or ignore it or deny it or try to explain it away or blame something for it, it's actually the greatest gift you've been given other than being alive. Because if it wasn't for this heartache calling you to come home to yourself, you would never find your way back home.
Ooh,
it's like thirst. Like if you never got thirsty, you would forget to drink water and you would dehydrate to death. If you never got hungry, you would get involved in all kinds of other things, will forget to eat. And so you would then starve to death. So the same value that thirst and hunger have to water and food, the same value thirst of the heart has to feeling whole, coming home to feel whole again.
Now, that idea of wholeness, is that, the way that the words that you use to describe it, in a sense, like an essence, is wholeness a state of being, or wholeness a place that we return to, and it's dependent on the situation? For example, does wholeness look different if you're going through a divorce than if you're dealing with a chronic a terminal illness? Does wholeness look different for each of those things? Or is wholeness, in the sense, really a state of being?
It's a state of being. It's a state of being. And in fact, it's beyond relationship and divorce, other than your relationship with yourself, right? And it's beyond illness and death. And that wholeness is not physical. It's really made of three things. One is inspiration. That's the outside part of it. Behind that is life energy, or unconditional love. And behind that is unconditional peace. Awareness, internal awareness, life energy, and inspired creativity. That's all internal stuff that most people don't look at, because we're mostly busy either in our head or in interaction with our environment, other people, environment, things, right? That's where most of us live our lives. In order to go to the place where the wholeness lives, we have to actually stop and sit still and be with ourselves. And we might feel the ache, and there might be tears, for at least at the beginning, until we find our way back home. And it takes practice, because we're really good at going out with our awareness. We're not very good at going in, right? Now, the reason why I say this is a state of being, I've met people who have like billions of dollars, and they're famous, and they have, you would think they had everything. And when you listen to their stories, no matter what they did in the world, no matter how big the project was, no matter how incredibly hard they worked, when they accomplish what they set out to accomplish, they feel let down. For 3 days, they celebrate. They say, yay, I did it, I did it, I did it. And on day 4, they feel let down, because they thought, consciously, subconsciously, we all do this, that when we accomplish what we set out to go, when we become successful by our own definition, then somehow we will just feel whole again. And it doesn't happen, because our wholeness is already there within us. Only our focus on it is missing. And you can't fulfill something that's on the inside by something you do on the outside. You can distract yourself from it for a while by what you do on the outside. But whenever you return to yourself, you will never feel quite whole until you get into that inner contentment, inner calmness, inner peace, equanimity, sometimes people call it. that is the foundation of your being. It's also the spark of God in you, if you want to use the religious terminology. The spark of God in you. Life is the master in you, and inspiration is the so-called Holy Spirit.
Ooh,
And that exists as part of your nature. It's there all the time. You're never far from it, but you have to go inward with the focus of your awareness. You have to come back home to yourself.
When we think about this idea of, you're talking about a beingness, a moving in, how do we take that that wholeness on the road? Like, how do we, if we're out in our lives and we're in our jobs and we're parenting or whatever, and there is outward focus, how is there a way to bring that inside outward? Or is it just that we have to remind ourselves as we're out and about busy doing that we then need to come back to a state of being? Can we take wholeness on the road?
Yeah, you can. but not until you ask that question, because you can go into it, and people do that through all kinds of stillness practices, meditation, whatever you call it, self-knowledge, whatever you call it, right? So you can go in, but then when you stop the practice, where you close your eyes and just get really quiet, but then when you come out of that, then you go right back into your senses, are back out in the world, and you're doing all the things you did, and then say, wow, where's that experience? I really like that experience, but now it's already gone, and it happens that fast, right? But what if you said, okay, you know what? Come hell or high water, I am going to drag this experience with me as I go out into the world to do the things that I need to do in the world. And then you get what is called simultaneous presence, which is you're present on the inside, in that peace, in that unconditional love, in that inspired creativity. And you're present in the outside world for the things that you need to negotiate, right? You need to walk, or you need to touch something, or you need to write something, or you need to do something. But it requires you understanding that you have to be, but you also can be simultaneously fully present in all of your being and the world. And you might slow down a little so that to remind yourself to stay in that inner place. You might, or you might not. And some people, when they get into really critical situations, actually those critical situations blow them into that inner, when people talk about being in the zone, that's kind of what's happening. Happens in sports, happens in crises, happens in different things. But it's more likely that you'll be in that when it's a deliberate choice. And in order to do that, you have to have learned how to go to that place at will. And that takes a little practice, because that thing is always in you. It doesn't matter what your story is. I was born in a war, so I should be like a total mess. The whole time that I was freaking out as a little kid in the war, because we were refugees, I was 2.5 years old. The communists were chasing us in tanks and trucks. We were on horse-drawn hay wagons, women and children. I was obviously one of the children. And there were dead horses and people in the ditches. And it was dirt roads, no military presence. And the Allies, the good guys, were using us as target practice, shooting at us from planes.
Wow.
In the midst of, now, you think of that, oh my God. And I can say, oh yeah, what happened to me. And I can use that for every excuse, for every failing. And, it's understandable that would happen. People would be very deeply affected in a negative way by those kind of experiences. But the whole time that the bullets were flying and we were freaking out and, there was chaos, something inside of me was in complete peace. Something inside of me took perfect care of my body, perfect love. The whole time, I was unconditionally loved by life. And it wasn't until the war ended when I was 3 or 2.5, I guess, right? It wasn't until I was 27 that one day when I was sitting in the sunshine, just hanging out, not doing anything in particular, that I realized, oh my God, the war ended so many years ago. I'm still bitching about it. And the whole time that this is going on, something has unconditionally loved me 24/7, 365, the whole time, all that time during, all that time before, and all the time after that crazy experience. And I've never given that any thought. Maybe I should say thank you.
Yes.
Maybe a little gratitude is in order here. Maybe I should try to become friends with them, because it's obviously friends with me, right? Yeah, maybe and then maybe I'd like to get to know them better. What is that thing that is unconditional love, that took such good care of me through all my dramas and all my traumas and all my mental illnesses and all my fears and all my depressions and all of my anxieties? And that thing is never affected by any of my emotional and mental situations. And how lucky are we? How incredibly lucky are we that such a thing is present in the core of our own being? I mean, it's like, who came up with that? How incredible is that?
It's very incredible. And I love what you said about I think sometimes when I'm looking out in the world, and I see a lot of people who stop at the thirst of the heart, like uncovering that thirst, and then kind of staying there is the point of everything. And so, and not realizing that thirst is actually a signal that it's trying to remind you of something bigger than that. And I see a lot of our fixation getting caught on even creating words of trauma and maybe victimization around that thirst from the heart, and not taking a step beyond that to see, well, what's behind that.
Yeah, it's true. And why is that? It's because it doesn't feel that good. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. And so what do we do when we don't like what we got? Well, we distract ourselves from it, or we deny it, or ignore it, or explain it away, or blame it on somebody. Actually, our whole life is driven by that thirst of the heart. Not only it grounds us, makes us simple, it's also our driving force. Because until you feel whole, there's always something going to be, there's got to be something. There's just, it's that powerful of a drive. So it's behind everything we do, positive or negative. Criminals do it negative, and, capitalists do it maybe positive, if that's not negative, right? So behind everything, it's also our heart calling our awareness to come home to ourselves, where the wholeness lives and where that pain dissolves in that wholeness. It's also the starting point for the journey home. And it's also, if you've learned that this is a gift calling you home, and you're practicing coming home, and then you start to drift because you say, oh, now I feel so good, and then you get sloppy again. But when you get sloppy again, and then you drift away from yourself again, it will begin up again to remind you to come home again. Isn't that cool?
It is cool. And I'm actually living that right now. I told you I lived in Japan, and I just recently moved back, and I felt very displaced the last month or so, because we don't even have all of our stuff here. And so this whole, literal, like, foundational home, as well as finding my home again in myself. And the voice today in my meditation, I sat down, and this is something you alluded to, and I had a conversation with fear and judgment and desire. And I thought, because I've been using distraction and, just all these different things, and I could feel the calling, that thirst of the heart calling me deeper, and like saying, okay, it's time for you to come back home. And even just, I've been told my husband, I wanted to do like a grounding exercise with my son and my husband and myself, because all of us have sort of been in this state of limbo. And it's cool how it works, because the voice gets pretty darn loud if you ignore it long enough.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and it won't go away, and it'll nag you. It'll nag you. It'll nag you all your life if you don't spend some time on a regular basis coming home to yourself. You know, your distraction, your the not your distraction, but the degree to which you feel uneasy about the external changes is the degree to which you have become addicted to the outside world, which always changes, and the degree to which you have not become addicted enough to the inside world, which never changes. Because you take that wherever you go through all your changes, you take that along, whether you're aware of it or not. It's always with you. There's nothing missing, right? The outside world has changed. And so takes a little getting used to it, but the pain of it is not required. Right? But if you had a really nice couch in Japan and then you came over here, but the couch is not here and you're really into this couch, then you're going to have some withdrawal symptoms from its absence, right?
Yes.
And then if it comes back, then you'll be happy again. But I would say it is to some extent a mistake to be that invested in the external world, because it changes.
Yes.
Because people leave, people come and go, people die, things break down, everything in the world of change changes. And if you invest your hope for constancy in things that change, you're literally, your expectation sets you up for the pain of losing things whose nature is to eventually get lost. People and things.
Yes. And the idea of stuff, before we started this recording, we were talking about having the place that is uncluttered and then having the cluttered space and spending more time in the uncluttered.
Here's my cluttered space. here's my open space. And the two both are within me. The clutter is in my mind.
Yes.
Right? And this and everything everywhere else is the space. There are no thoughts other than in the cortex of your brain. There are no thoughts in your nose. There are no thoughts in your kneecaps. There are no thoughts in your toenails. There are no thoughts in any part of your body. So literally, if you can bring your awareness out of your head, out of your thoughts, just into any other part of your body, everything's okay. And then you feel whatever the sensation is in your body. That comes and goes too. But we know that, so we're not as attached to it or addicted to it. Right?
Yes. You've used the word addiction several times. And I know, for example, from like the Buddhist tradition, they talk about desire or addictions or these longings for things, and it's the attachment. And so on some level, I know that it's my couch isn't home. My couch doesn't symbolize home, that sense of home is found, like you said, coming back within myself. And it's not about having, the silverware or having that chair in my room or my wall hangings. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not judging it either. I'm not making it wrong. But we're just talking about where our focus goes and where our attention goes, because wherever our focus goes, that becomes our reality. Right? And if you and there's a man who taught me how to do a practice inside. He said one time, don't depend on things that end. But look around and like, that doesn't mean don't be with them and doesn't mean don't interact with them. But don't expect them to bring you that stable foundation that is also an important part of living. Don't expect them to give you the stable foundation. The stable foundation is your foundation inside of you. Depend on that for your stability. And then you're out of your head, because it's not in your thoughts that you find that stability, but in the awareness that is the foundation, that is actually this is the awareness right here, right? Nothing there, but all possibility exists. And everything that exists, including you and the entire universe, comes out of awareness. That's its foundation. And that foundation of the whole universe is in you. Wow, wow, is that cool or what?
That is cool.
Now, the thing though that we, I think, ought to talk about is how does the thirst of the heart come to be? How do we get disconnected from ourselves? You want to talk about that?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, so when you're in your mother's body, in your mother's womb, I call it the Buddha tank, because it's a nice word, right? When you're in your mother's womb, your body is developing, you're not doing anything, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, you don't have any words, there's nothing to think about, right? There's nothing to go out to, everything's taken care of, and it's pretty safe. So where is your awareness during that time? Well, it never had anywhere to go, so it just stayed home. So you were in your mother's womb in a Buddha state, enlightened or enlightened. You were present, your awareness was focused inside, in its source, in life, inside. And you hung out there for 9 months if you were not a premature born baby. You hung out there 9 months. So we've all been in this place of perfect wholeness for almost a year. It's like a deep meditation, but not because we knew how to do a meditation and not because we were trying to use it for crisis management, but because we were embedded in our whole own nature. And we didn't know much about the body at that point, and we knew nothing about the outside world. So we were at home in that place. That's why when you go into deep meditation, you actually recognize that place. It's not a new experience. And then what happens? We get born and all hell breaks loose. Everything changes, right? Because now you're not automatically being fed. Now you got to cry when you're uncomfortable. You cry when you're tired. You cry when you're cold. You cry when you're hungry. You cry when your diapers are full. And somebody on the outside manages your basics at this point. And then you get drawn out into the world because you now have to get to know the world. And, mom tells you to use words when you're just crying. And you learn the language and you learn the culture and you learn how things operate, how the world works. And so your awareness that started present inside, but absent outside, is drawn out through your senses into the world, and you end up present outside and absent inside. That's where heartache began. And it isn't trauma that creates the heartache. Trauma often triggers your recognition of your separation, of your loss. But trauma doesn't cause it. This is a natural process, happens to every human being. And it's not until you get to a point where you recognize that your emptiness cannot be fulfilled by something on the outside, that you start to say, well, if it can't be done on the outside, it must be an inside job. So then let me find a way to bring my awareness back inside and see if I can find my wholeness there. And when you do, because it's there, because it's always there. It never leaves you. Only your focus wanders off, right? The awareness is still there. The life energy is still there. Inspired creativity is still there. And the moment you go back to it, you bring your focus back to the core of your being. All of that stuff, your Buddha state that you had in the Buddha tank, you're back in the Buddha state.
I like that you made a distinction about the trauma and the experiences and the suffering, because I think, again, going back to that, getting stuck in the thirst of the heart, we've made it into something that I don't think honors the recognition that we all experience trauma and we get kind of stuck there.
Yeah. And what I'm saying, I mean, you can go two ways on explaining that. I can say, your original trauma is your gradual separation of focus from the wholeness of your being. So that would be the common trauma of the human race. And what's interesting about it, I can have a war, and you can have. I saw your empathy when I talked about it, just like, oh my God, it's kind of like, geez, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, right? Of course, it was a gift because it got me focused very early on looking for something, because my world wasn't working that well on the outside. So it drew me more into the inner world to deal with it, because I couldn't deal with it on the outside. But even people who've had, born to rich, educated, interested, well-educated, with a diversion of interest, every sport available, every movie available, everything available, the thirst of the heart is just as deep and just as painful in people who have gotten everything as it is in people who had nothing. Because the disconnection from ourselves into a sweet world of distraction or a sour world of distraction. The problem isn't the world of distraction. The problem is the disconnect. And there's no kid that doesn't disconnect, and there's no kid that isn't trauma, because there are no perfect parents, and there are no perfect children, and there are no perfect situations. So children cry about things. They don't get what they want, they cry, right? If you could always get what you wanted and everybody spoiled you rotten, you would still disconnect from yourself, and you would still have the thirst of the heart to contend with, and still would not know what to do with it until somebody reframed it for you and made its significance understandable.
I want to talk for a moment about inspiration. You had mentioned that.
Yeah.
And in one of your interviews that I listened to, you said people don't make changes if they don't feel inspired. So how do we invite more inspiration into our lives, or how do we feel more inspired?
Okay, it's same thing. What is inspiration? Inspiration is the shine of the energy that is life, that is solar energy, that goes into green leaves, that gets stored in bonds between atoms in molecules that become our food. And when we eat those foods, that solar energy is released, and that's what our life is. We are creatures of the sun. So when you look at like all the old tribes who used to worship the sun, they were not far off, right? But when you bring your awareness inside into that energy, that is solar energy, that is also life energy, that energy is also unconditional love, because it's the nature of light, of solar energy is to shine, right? That's just its nature. And when you go into it subjectively and you merge in that light, that is what we call the master. Whether you call it Buddha or Christ or Krishna or a bunch of there are lots of them in different cultures in different times. And essentially, they all said the same thing. First of all, they said, what I have, everybody has. What I have, you have. If you do the practice of sitting still and going inside like they all did, you will discover what I discovered within you, and what you see in me that makes you call me master is the same life, same solar energy, same master that runs everything in your body as what's running it in my body. That's where your wisdom is embedded. That's where your insight comes from, right? So inspiration is the shine of that energy into the world. Not very complicated. It doesn't have an existence of its own, but it is the nature of the sun to shine, and your life is sunshine. And so that sunshine runs everything in your body, because it's energy and it's power. Weighs nothing, by the way, is your individual essence, by the way. You're not the body. You're the owner of the body. That's why you call it my body, right? Mm-hmm. So, this is my watch. I'm not the watch. I own the watch. Well, I own the body. but I, as solar energy, own the body. And most of us don't know ourselves as that energy. It is the nature of that energy to shine. And because it's the nature of that energy to shine, inspiration is automatic with the shine of that energy. Now, why does that make it easier to break habits? Is because habits are ruts, mental ruts, certain way of thinking, and then a certain way of action, and then a certain kind of outcome that is predictable from whatever it is you're doing. And if these consequences are not good and you want to change it, it's really hard to break those ruts. But when you get inspired or you get a little closer to the light is never in a rut. There are no ruts for light. It shines through things, right? And so what it does, it gives you energy, it raises you out of the ruts, and then you feel so good that you want to do whatever it takes to be around as long as you can in as high a quality as you can. And then making changes, because now you see a possibility. Now you feel the possibility, because if you're feeling inspired, then you feel really good. Oh, I want more of this. Well, yeah, but you have to give up some of the stuff that keeps you from getting it. Oh, I'll give it up, no problem. I'll give it up because I like this better, right? And that's why it makes, it still takes time. It still takes effort to change habits, because you're running tracks that are deeply worn, so they're very easy to go there by default. But when you're inspired, you're more conscious. You see yourself doing it, and at some point you can say, "Nope, I'm not doing it this time. Nope, I'm doing something else." And then you can figure out what you would rather replace the habit with, and then start wearing that habit into a rut. And so you've gone from a lesser good rut to a better good rut, right?
Yes.
And that's how change takes place. It's hard, when you begin, you don't even know. A lot of times you don't even know you react to a trigger so fast, you don't even notice that you're making a choice, but you're always making a choice. And you may be unconscious of that choice or subconscious of that choice. When you become inspired, it becomes more obvious. And the deeper you go into your being, the more obvious it becomes that you have the choice of where your focus goes. And where your focus goes is where you learn and what your knowledge becomes, and then what your beliefs come that you create out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So change is easy when you're inspired, and it's almost impossible or not. How dealing with addicts again, how do you help addicts? There's got to be a hope for something better. If you could give an addict a better experience than the experience he gets from drugs, he would give up the drugs relatively easily for a better experience. But most addicts don't know of a better experience. And there are experiences that are deeper and better, more subtle, more whole than the experience you can get from drugs, and even the experiences you can get from psychedelic. Because the experience of the magnificence, of the awesomeness of life, I've never seen the bottom of it. I've been doing this practice for almost 50 years. And and not as a stress management technique. A lot of people do it as a stress management technique. No, I'm in love with this experience. I love this experience. So then it's not hard to take time to practice. I love the experience. I have never seen the bottom of it.
Do you think we do a disservice? I've always kind of thought that when you speak to your audience. So do you think we do a disservice to this work that you're talking about when we frame it as far as like stress reduction or, more in personal growth or self-help language? Do you think that's however we get people to move within, that's the best approach? Or do you think that using language like, here's meditation, it's great for stress reduction, do you think that is detrimental?
No, It's not, you know what, anytime, if you use meditation for stress reduction, it works.
Mhm.
But what happens is when the stress is gone, because you're only focused on getting rid of the stress, then when the stress is gone, you stop the meditation. And it's kind of like pain is not a good motivator for growth. Pain, you're just trying to get out of the pain. When the pain's gone, you stop. When you fall in love with it, when you fall in love with the possibility, you have a much bigger picture. You have a much, you're opening up into something much bigger than you can get from dealing with stress. It works for stress reduction. There's no doubt about it. It's just that long-term stress reduction will get you to stop. But when you're in love with something, you cannot get enough of it, and you can do it for the rest of your life. And so in that sense, I think what we're, I don't judge it, but what we're doing is we're not giving the practice a fair representation for its potential.
And when you say practice, are you specifically talking about meditation, or are there other ways to move back into our home, connect back with our home and our awareness?
The issue is always anything that gets the focus of awareness to go inside of your being, out of your head and out of the world into your being. And it's all usually some kind of a stillness practice. You sit down quietly, you sit down without judgment, you just feel what there is, you just feel the sensations in your body, you just follow your breath, you just feel the bum on your chair, you just feel your feet on the ground. You just look for the light in the darkness, you just listen to the sound in your inner silence, you just listen, or you try to find the love in your emptiness. I've just given you 18 different techniques that come out of different principles. But the issue is always you want to fully occupy the space inside your body. When you fully occupy it, and not looking for a liver and guts, but for energy. It's like energy, right? Energy feeling, your senses monitor energy. What you want to do is you want to invert your senses and monitor the energy inside, because you can see it in the darkness, and you can hear it in the silence, and you can feel it in the emptiness. And it's always there. And it's a different way of focusing. It's putting the focus in a place that is different from where our focus ordinarily goes in the world. And it's, whether you call it self-knowledge or you call it meditation, or it doesn't matter what you call it. And anything that will get you there will get you there. I'm talking about anything that will get you there. If you could lie down in a creek, on the bottom of a creek, and lick the bottoms of the rocks at the bottom of the creek, if that would get you there, I would recommend it. It's just, it doesn't get you there. Right?
Thankfully.
Anything that gets you there. I mean, literally anything that gets you there. And there might be 8 billion methods for 8 billion people, because this is a journey you take on your own. You can get some help, and you can get a contact high from somebody who feels good. No doubt about that. That's why models for what it's like to be in that space can be helpful, because some people have never met somebody like that. Some people have grown up in a situation where everybody's just always bitching and swearing and doing violence and yelling and screaming. Some people have not seen different kind of human possibility. So it helps to meet people like that, and maybe even ask them some questions, or have a conversation with them, and just there's a feeling around being present in your own space. And that can be helpful as a stepping stone. But when you say, okay, I like the feeling that you have, I want to have that feeling too. Now you got to go not to that person, because your feeling is not out there, your feeling is in here. In fact, even the contact high, you feel it in here. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice if you didn't feel it inside. That's because that same feeling exists in you as a state of being, and you touch into that state of being. But you want to not be dependent on somebody else on the outside to get you there. That's why they teach a method, and you practice the method, and you can maybe, who knows what the method is. You know, you practice the method, but you do that on your own. Nobody's in there saying, do it now. No, look left, look right. It's not like that. You have to, it's experimental, because if you learn it from doing it, and you learn what there is, and you learn better ways to get there. And it becomes easier with practice, just like anything.
Yes.
You know, when I learned how to walk, it was like that too. You know, I tried to get up and I fell on my schnoz, right? And then I tried again and I fell again. And then I finally got up on the table and I walked too far forward and I flipped and hit, you know, fell on my back and hit my head on the floor, right? But I never quit. And now I can walk and I can run, and I, you know, I still stumble sometimes, but you know, so in a way, this practice of embodying the solar energy you are, or the unconditional love that you are, embodying that takes practice, starting from where you are in that direction. My question was, when I started getting serious about it, was I want to have the experience that the master had, that inspired him to say what he say and heal what he healed and do what he did. And some, you know, we're still talking about these masters thousands of years later, right? 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years later, we're still talking about these people because there was something so amazing about them. So my question is, why can't I have that experience? I don't want to be the master, but I want to have his experience. And then you start reading it and they say, yeah, you can have that experience. They all said it. They all said it. But you can't have that experience by memorizing the words. You can't have that experience by doing something completely else. You have that experience by modeling at least the internalizing part of what they spoke about. Right?
Yes.
But most people wouldn't dare to ask the question, you know, what would it take for me to have the experience that the master had? Because they don't, because the organized institutions around those masters don't recommend it. In fact, they try to discourage you from it. And in some ways, they've turned the message of the masters on its head. And then they try to interpret it for you. And then they try to beat you into memorizing it, or threatening you with hellfire and damnation if you don't do it their way. But that wasn't what the masters talked about. They talked about, you know, they talked about having a more abundant life. They didn't talk about, you know, in fact, my deepest experience that I can put in words, this is the master's message, all the master's message. This is also the message life has for your body. I am come not to judge, but to love. I am come not to judge, but to love. Is there a better way to summarize the message of the masters? I don't know one. Right?
That's pretty good.
I am come not to judge, but to love. And unconditional love, but that's your life says that to your body too. And in a way, the sun says that to the earth too. Right? I am come not to judge, but to love. Right? And the sun shines on the just and the unjust. Right? And life treats everybody, whether a criminal or a politician or a farmer or a little kid, loves every one of those unconditionally, no matter what their history is, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what their background is, no matter what their stories are that they tell themselves, no matter how much crazy stuff they've picked up from living in a world full of crazy people that are not in touch with that unconditional love. Life energy loves everybody on the planet unconditionally. 8 billion people, both genders, all races, all age groups, all cultures, all religions. Same message for every one of them. I am come not to judge, but to love.
Wow.
And now if you can feel that love, that's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
And when I feel that love, I feel so cared for that I'm no longer a narcissist. See, because it's not about me anymore, because I'm cared for. And it's like, okay, I'm cared for. And if I don't feel cared for, I know what to do to feel cared for, because it's there. So I only just have to check in. And when I feel cared for, then what? Then what do I do? Well, there's nothing left to do. It's not about me anymore. Then it becomes like, okay, where can I help? Okay, what needs to be done? Okay, where's the biggest splash I can make for good in the time I have in one body? And then you find your purpose becomes very easy too, because your purpose is whatever needs to be done, that you have talent for, that you're around, that you have access to, that you have maybe experience in, and the thing you always want to do into every one of those situations, bring love into that situation. Nothing doesn't get made better with more love. And nothing doesn't get worse when love is taken from it. So in one sense, so simple.
So simple. Yeah. And
right?
Yes.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah, you can it because it takes practice. It's simple and it takes practice. But the question to ask is it worthwhile? Is that worthwhile? To love without judgment. Is that worthwhile?
Absolutely.
Then how much effort would you be willing to give it?
A lot, actually. When I had mentioned I had that kind of sat down with fear and desire and judgment, it was judgment that was my biggest,
mm-hmm.
In
a way it always is.
Yeah, my most vocal opponent. And again, and then the flip side of that, I was shown love. Yeah. So anyway, I think this is a fantastic place.
And you always get to go where that love is. It is always there in every human being. Now, I would love to spend my time bringing that out in people, or pointing.
I think you've done a pretty good job of that.
or pointing to it, or recognizing that it's there, including in the people who, I don't have a good relationship with. But I have to know that in myself first before I can apply that to anybody else.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you so much. I want to give you the opportunity to share your website and social media and anything else you'd like to leave my listeners with today.
Okay. So I worked, we never talked about oils. I work with oils. I developed a method for making oils with health in mind, and developed flax oil out of that method, and work with oils, enzymes, probiotics, basically physical health products. And the website for that is UDO'sCHOICE.com, UDO'S And I do this for free. So if anybody wants to read about the products and wants to buy them off the website, then that pays for my free education. And then I have another website. It's called theudo.com, THEUDO.com. And we have some courses there, and we have some education. I have a YouTube channel under Udo Erasmus, which I'm sure will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And I'm on Instagram in places. I'm on Facebook in places. I'm not hard to find. There are not many Udos around. If you just punch in UDO, I show up on the first page. There are a few Udos around, a few other ones, but I'm probably the most prominent Udo on Facebook at this point.
I would say. Well, I want to thank you so much. I feel just so calm and present right now, just talking with you. So thank you so much for all the work that you do and taking time to speak with my listeners today.
Right. And your sofa's coming anyway.
Yes, it is going to be sometime it'll be here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
It's been a joy to have this conversation.
Do you need more spiritual sustenance in your daily life? Check out chaosandlight.com, where new articles, blogs, meditations are added weekly. chaosandlight.com, a playground for mind, mystery, and human potential. Well, that's it for today's episode. Coming up on the next one, we will have Dr. Allison J.K. Well, that's it. Take care and seek the mystery.